how the information age and the sharing culture, this incentivizes defective behavior. So we have basically to define what is defective behavior, if you want to talk about this. Defective behavior is something that harms somebody else towards your own benefit. Of course, there is also altruism, which is basically defined as helping others and then in return getting something for you. Because if you are helping others, you're not really helping them, but you're actually indirectly helping yourself. At least that's kind of my thinking and understanding of the current state of biology, which might be slightly influenced and biased by my own thinking. So now, of course, you could also say altruism is the thing that is really helping others, despite having no potential upside. But even if you take a look at people who drive to developing countries, for example, in order to help these other people, what I think often people might be missing is that they're getting basically constant confirmation from these people. It's the same as if you are a fitness, let's say you're a personal trainer and you're helping someone, you're basically getting constant confirmation from this person that you are better in terms of at least health from this person, and additionally they also give you money and things like these. I mean, these are only a few factors, and I don't want to spark off discussion on these topics, even though I just mentioned these topics. But what we want to actually discuss is how the information age disincentivizes defective behavior. So what is defective behavior then? It's basically using something that is available to many more people and using it because you can use it, kind of. So the basic example, the Commonwealth example, is you have a certain amount of land. And this land is not owned by anyone, and this land can be basically farmed by anyone of a given town. So the town has a few different people, and these people can use this land. And now, every person who uses this land, of course, means that somebody else can potentially use less of this land. So if one person, for example, uses all of this land, that's something that could be considered very selfish. So now, because it's very selfish and it's also directly harming the other people, because there is only an absolute amount of land that the people can use, then this basically directly harms. So basically, with every increase of a unit of land, you're basically increasing the harm to other people. So this might be considered a defective strategy if you want to raise basically the part of the land you use. Now, this is only a small example. The big example is obviously maybe the environment. We only have one Earth, at least currently, and the problem here is that whenever somebody, so there are two things you can do. And if you are, for example, a business and you are producing chemicals, you can either release basically all of the trash chemicals you have into the local river and basically potentially harming others, but therefore also saving costs on the waste, or on the basically on the disassembly of the waste. But the other part is, so you are basically harming others by having a financial gain, and that's the other part, that you obviously save money on this strategy. But the problem is that it harms basically the common people. It harms the other humans on average to a certain extent. And this might also be considered a defective behavior. So I think we can define defective behavior as harming basically all of the other humans, or at least some set of these other humans, in favor of getting a potential benefit for you, which does not really have the same weight. So now, why does the information age or the sharing culture potentially decrease the incentive that is there for defective behavior? Because the information age basically means that more and more information gets accessible, becomes accessible to more and more people. So recently, for example, I watched a YouTuber which kind of exposed scammers in Prague, or in Czech, or in other countries. Or also, I mean, this YouTuber, his name is Carl Rock, apparently, and he just goes into countries and exposes scammers. He also does other travel kind of videos. But the thing is that these people are now caught on camera. And now, for these people, this is basically the total ruin of their image. If enough people see this online, and of course not everybody in the world will ever see this, but a potential set of potential customers or people who they want to scam is now at least partially informed. It is not only partially informed about how this person looks, but also partially informed about how this scam actually works. So therefore, as we increase and expose more and more information, and more exposing, of course, has an obvious negative connotation. But the thing is, the more data we collect, the more likely it is that we record data that is actually bad behavior or exemplifies bad behavior, such as a politician, for example, having an affair with somebody, which is considered by most people as something that is very bad. But apart from the fact that it might be considered very bad and it might cost this politician his career, a few hundred years back, there probably was a lot less evidence for this kind of behavior. Because currently, what potentially the US government can do is to just request access from Google for the GPS tracks of basically any given person in the US. And they don't really have to request it because there are basically unspoken agreements between many of these big tech firms and the US authorities that they basically just exchange data. And now, I mean, this has become obvious many times before, and also the same is true with phone calls. So what this means for us, if we have something like a phone with us at all time, if we also have something like a watch with us at all time that also might potentially connect to different Wi-Fis. So there are a few different, so Wi-Fi tracking is one potential location tracking method. GPS is another one. You can also track a phone's location and therefore somewhat a person's location by basically cross-sectioning or cross-intersecting the different data points, the different cell towers they actually connect to. So you also have this option of potentially locating someone. So therefore, if you just have all this location data available, and then you have a certain case, and you also have access to this data, then the evidence is just more likely to be much more there, and therefore potentially hurting someone. So I think there is less and less an incentive to actually display defective behavior, to actually scam somebody, because this somebody might just see you in the near-term future anytime soon. And this scammer, for example, if there is a scammer, or if you just have a friend, and in the past few hundred years ago maybe, you could potentially display defective behavior, such as, for example, if you have, so there was this example by Karl Rock. So he basically kind of exposed, maybe it was Karl Rock, maybe it was also a different scam exposer. And basically in a Czech town, there is a small food shop. And this small food shop sells certain amounts of meat to customers. Now, what they consider a normal portion is different for the locals compared to the tourists. The tourists have a normal portion that is a multiple of the size of the normal portion that is considered a normal portion by many people, and also they are giving out to the locals. And therefore they are charging the customers that are tourists much more because they just don't really know the language, they have trouble understanding, and then they probably have a higher likelihood of just accepting a price. So basically they are misusing the tourists in order to get more sales. They're not charging them more per unit of meat, but they are giving them more meat as requested, and therefore charging them more for the meat. So you could say it's good because it's not really differentiating, at least price differentiating, but what they are differentiating on is the portion size. So now, if somebody, like a scammer, exposes this, then of course this again gets known by more and more people, and therefore decreases the likelihood of someone displaying this defective behavior. Now, in the past, you could have gotten away with this much more easily. For example, if there is a traveler, and this traveler moves to this country and stops there, and then for this one night, for this one evening, potentially for all of the traveler's life, he gets scammed by this person. But if he never sees this person again, this shop again, or if the shop never sees the person again, then that's just a transaction that is gone. That's just an opportunity that is used for the shop. But now, if the more and more we become a globalized society, the more and more we spread information about defective behavior, and share it with others, basically just increasing the amount of communication between individual humans and therefore sharing more information about these defective behaviors. We as a society basically create a social pressure, a social peer pressure that is not only among a certain group. So for example, if you are in a certain group and you send your friend a link to download a scam bot, for example, that actually gives you 250 euros. That potentially kills your image within this certain friend group and maybe potentially for life. But if you do this to a person on the other side of the world you don't know, that's what scammers often do. Phone call scammers, like calling for Microsoft and then kind of trying to get your credit card details and things like these, then you might have not the same social pressure. So therefore, what I'm arguing is that as we increase the information sharing between every single human, the average information flow between every single human to each other human, that this decreases, so it increases the social pressure. Basically, it creates a global social pressure of all humans, potentially, compared to the old social pressure that was only very strong within your friend group, and therefore potentially decreases the likelihood of a given person displaying defective behavior.